He's a business owner in Canada and a billionaire, actually.
Okay, so someone who knows how to make money, because you mentioned that you're not really in it for the money, but you met with someone who knows how to make money, and he said you should get in on, how did you put it, indigenous angle
that he became, indigenous procurement that he became aware of, yeah.
That he became aware of. So he put you on to something, and indeed, that's what business people do. Now, you were not in business at the time, as you said. You had no experience with technical work, coding. What was your background? You were a reservist with the armed forces.
Well, I mean, if you predate my experience, I went through for computer science, and I've been involved with computers my whole life. But certainly, the aspect of my military career and my reserve career, and then eventually getting back into my high-tech world after all of that experience was the direction that I took.
So was your intention then to start up a technical services company where you yourself, as an Indigenous person, as you have identified yourself to us, would then be providing services to the government, who was at the time, and this has covered, of course, a number of governments trying to promote Indigenous businesses?
Yeah, in actual fact, the company started out as a hardware and software company. We didn't really get into professional services until 2007, 2008. So our initial, or my
was it your intention then, when you did get into professional services, to hire Indigenous employees?
Absolutely.
Can you say that you have used your access to Indigenous contracts to hire Indigenous employees?
Absolutely, and we did have Indigenous employees in the shop. Yeah.
All right. Well, at least that. Now, going back to, but somehow it didn't work out. You had high points and low points. You weren't making money. At some point, you decided to get yourself hired again with DND. You entered into a contract of service. Referring to your contract, there were a number of paragraphs there, actually, that refer to the Code of Ethics for the public sector, and also to the Conflict of Interest Code. In one such paragraph, there's actually a form called the Confidential Report, Form DND 2839, which talks specifically about conflict of interest. This is in your contract that you yourself signed. Do you recall this form that you would have signed? So it does speak specifically to conflict of interest, which is not something that you have been forthcoming about here in earlier testimony. And you seem to be an equal opportunity conflict of interest, how shall we say, operator, because it goes on to talk about political activities, where federal public service employees have a right to engage in political activities while maintaining the principle of political impartiality in the public service. And that there's information to that regard. Is that something that you also recall signing?
It's definitely in the offer, but the political side of it was back in 21.
All right. And then going back to when you did decide to become a member of Parliament, and I'd like to hear why you decided that, because at the time you were operating Dalian, and that you had contracts with DND, so that were involved in the ArriveCAN. And as other colleagues have pointed out, hard to believe that you did not know that Dalian was working on ArriveCAN. So why did you decide to become a member of Parliament to run as a candidate?
So, in true form, as my Indigenous heritage, side of it, my great-grandfather signed the treaties in 1923 in November. In the spring of 2024, the Colonials came back through and enfranchised my whole entire family. They enfranchised hundreds of people, and they enfranchised
So you ran for the
people.
People's Party of Canada in recognition of your Indigenous ancestry. Is that correct?
I'm definitely getting to my why for sure, and that is that my entire family has been enfranchised, and I am caught up in the second-gen cutoff rule. This is a politically genocidal article out of Bill C-31 that still is in the Indian Act today. And my entire family is caught up in it, and hundreds of thousands of Canadians are caught up in it. So my why as to why I wanted to get back in as a member of Parliament was to actually create a private members bill that would allow that part of the act, the Indian Act, to be solved once and for all, which would not only help me, but help hundreds of thousands of Canadians.
Thank you. That is your time, Ms. Shanahan. Maintenant, c'est Madame Sinclair-Desgagnés encore pour 2 minutes 30 secondes, s'il vous plaît.
Monsieur Yo.
Mr. Yo, you declared previously, and you've just done it again today, that you placed your company into a trust so that you would have, it would be a blind trust. Did you inform your team and the people that support you of this process?
The team at Dalian were definitely aware that we were going through this process, yes.
Mais donc, comprennent-ils qu'apposer une signature...
Do they understand that placing a signature is the same as placing approval? So by placing your signature, it was your responsibility and you no longer had a right. If you were no longer supposed to be intervening in Dalian's business, you were not supposed to be signing. That's very basic. Who placed your signature there
à votre place, sans que vous le...
without you knowing about it?
It would have been, my staff that I directed. So this is definitely on me. I would have directed my staff. I did direct my staff to, while I was in this area of being able to work with the department and also, put everything into a blind trust, that I gave them the authority to go ahead and make sure, and I trusted them. So.
Tout à l'heure, vous avez dit que Dalian...
You just said that Dalian only had 2 employees, you and your partner. So who's the staff?
Yeah, so that's kind of where, there's a misinterpretation of that. We have 2 people on staff as far as our full-time employment is concerned, but we have a shared services model with Caradics that allows us to work with, CFO, HR, operations, etc.
Okay.
It's been
Donc,
like
c'est
that for
quelqu'un
20
chez
years.
Coradix qui utilisait votre...
So someone from Coradix used your signature without your consent, whereas you had requested to be in a blind trust? Who placed the signature in your stead without your consent?
No, it was one of my members of staff that I gave the authority to use my signature.
D'accord, mais vous venez de répondre que c'est quelqu'un...
But you've just said it was someone from Coradix. If your company, if Dalian is you and your partner, was it your partner who then placed your signature without your consent? Why didn't he sign if he's also an owner?
So he's not an owner. He is a member of my staff, and I gave him the authority to use my signature while I was at D&D.
Donc, vous êtes l'unique propriétaire de Dalian.
So you're the sole owner of Dalian, nobody else? Have I understood you correctly? There is no partner?
Well, I have Caradics as a partner, yes, as a minority shareholder, yeah.
D'accord. Mais c'est...
Very well. Could you give me the name of the individual who placed your signature and who therefore did not inform you that he was signing contracts in your stead?
So I gave them the authority to use my
D'accord, c'est qui?
signature.
C'est qui?
So,
Je demande un...
I'm asking you for a name. Who?
yeah. So a member of my staff gave that that I gave my authority to, and his name is Kyle Dixon. Like I'm at a point right now where you have to understand that I am trying to help you guys get where you need to go and give you the answers that you need. If you want people's names in my staff, I'll give you all of the names in my staff.
Et voilà. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Next, Mr. Desjardins.
Please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. At the very beginning, Mr. Yo, you mentioned, quote, you were hired on September 29th, 2023. So why did Corporations Canada have you listed as a director until March 2024?
So it was 19 September. So the 19th of September, 2023 is when I started with my employment with the public service. And as far as, Contracts Canada getting their updates, like I said, my lawyers were putting all of the documents and everything together and staffing that through for me. And that's the date that they have on record.
So when did you first become interested in working in the public service?
When did I first become interested?
After your incorporation of your company, sorry.
After the incorporation. So I've really been, working with the department for 36 years. It was just recently that I decided, because I've got, 5, 6 years, maybe 7 years left of working, that I would actually look to go back and provide more value to the department by driving some of their large projects. So
in that time, did you disclose a potential conflict of interest?
So as a contractor, I've been working with the department for 22 years. So, having the discussions about me moving over to the public service, has been very recent because I just signed on the 19th of September. So, I'm not sure.
So
if I
from
answered your
September
question or
to
not.
March, the time between those 2 dates, the time you left Dalian, the time you were a public servant, at any moment in there, did you declare a potential conflict of interest
To the department?
to the department?
Or to the department. So we were in the process of doing that over the fall and into January and getting all the documents and paperwork together to put everything into a blind trust and that sort of stuff. And it's on me because we probably should have done that way before the 19th of September, and we didn't.
So you're aware that there is a conflict, which is why you undertook that work.
But the D&D has come back out and said there was no conflict because of I don't know why the whole idea of the conflict is a little bit nebulous to begin with because of my position in D&D and the documents I put together for Dalian to put in a no access and no visibility into what they were doing since the 19th.
On that blind trust, who's the trustee?
Kyle Dixon.
And how do you know them?
He's a member of my staff, and he's been a stalwart worker of mine for a long time.
And at any point between your discussions of the declaration of conflict and this employee you have, was the conversation of the paperwork that never got done? At what point did he bring that up as a potential issue?
So the paperwork did get done. It just could have been at a more timely basis, like prior to me joining on the 19th. But if you could repeat your question, I'll answer it.
Do you know, I'll ask it in a different way if I can, Mr. Chair. Did you know there was a potential conflict before your trustee, or before your trustee made you aware of that? Or did you ask your employee to be your trustee in your knowledge that there may be a potential conflict?
No, I didn't ask my employee about it. I got to make sure I get that right. So the whole idea of putting in the appropriate documentation and putting things into a blind trust happened over all the fall and into the early part of 2024.
But I'm trying to understand why you didn't make that clearer before.
Sorry, clear in what way?
At the very start of today's discussion, one of my conservative colleagues made a question to you about a potential conflict here, and you flat out said there was no potential conflict. And now you're saying that you obviously knew of the potential conflict and filed paperwork to that degree.
No, we didn't expect a conflict to happen at all because of the level of position that I went in with D&D. It's a very low-level position. And so there was no conflict awareness at all. We were just putting in the safeguards to make sure that if there ever was in the future, they'd be in place.
Thank
Is
you.
that your perspective?
Thank you very much. I'm afraid that is your time, Mr. Dizzy, but you'll get another round. Turning now to Mr. Barrett. Mr. Barrett, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Do you have any companies or interests in companies outside of Canada?
No, sir.
No offshore holdings?
No.
Are any of your former colleagues at D&D double dipping?
I'm not sure I don't know if I know what that means, but I am not aware of any double dipping going on.
It's what you do. It's working for the federal government as a public servant, but also as a contractor concurrently.
Well, I would assume that there are lots of people in the public service that have companies outside of the public service, yes.
That do
But
work for the government of Canada. You think that that's quite common?
I think it's fairly common, yes.
And what do you base that on? Just your personal experience or conversations with other public servants?
I would say that it's just my own perception. I've been around the department forever, and everybody has their day-to-day work, and maybe they have a little side gig at night doing something else.
For the same department that they work for?
Oh, probably not. No, if you're talking about that, yeah, no.
No. You talked about how you took this job to drive projects. What did you say your position was within the public service?
So I am a tactical security specialist that's certified in high assurance capabilities that go into the Canadian Army at the very pointy end of the stick in combat vehicles, on soldiers. I'm a soldier myself.
Yep. Not the
yeah.